Sounds like somebody was having a game show there.
Hello?
Good evening to everyone. My clock tells me it's just about 6:55, so we'll get started in about 5 minutes. We still got folks joining us, and we're hoping that on a nice night like tonight, I know that there's people harvesting and people doing all sorts of things outside, so it's a bit hard to sit in a meeting, but we're glad you're all here. And if you'll notice on your screen, the discussion today is being recorded, so it will be available for everyone to watch at their leisure later on, as even if they're not on the call. Welcome to the Phil and Tricia and Abigail.
Hello.
We'll get started in just a couple minutes. It's great to have you here with us tonight.
They are here. They're just off screen right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to find chairs.
Hello.
Hi, Gerald.
Hi.
I'm just finishing something.
Okay. Well, we'll let you do that. You're not, I don't think you're first up to talk, so you get a bit of time yet. And Anita's raised her hand and is waving hi. That was my phone telling me that I had a Zoom call now. Well, I'd like to get our meeting started. For those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Gerald Huebner, and I'm with the Manitoba Association of Christian Homeschools, who are the sponsors and the organizers of this series of Exploring Home Education. I want to start by welcoming everyone to our call this evening, and particularly our presenters, Anita McKee, Phil and Tricia and Abigail Goose, and Larissa McDonald. Larissa was on a call earlier this, well, it was in the end of August, and great to have you back, Larissa. So we're coming to you from a number of places in Manitoba this evening. Larissa's out in Minnedosa. Anita is from Ile de Chêne area, but is actually in the next room to where we are right now in Niverville. And the Gooses are just down the road a little bit east of here. So it's great to be together with you. What we want to talk about this evening is the third in the series of Exploring Home Education, which is, we're going to be talking about homeschooling high school. And certainly a number of people have asked the question throughout the series so far. What about high school? I've got a child who's either approaching or is in those years. And what do we do? What are the intricacies of this homeschooling through high school? And so we've got three families that have done it. And we've asked them to share with you this evening their experience and be prepared to address questions. And the real mastermind and instigator behind this evening is Anita McKee. Many of you have sure met Anita at the Matches Conference, along with our other speakers here tonight. But Anita, I'm going to ask you to start and welcome you here. But before we do that, why don't we just pray together and ask for God's blessing as we spend some time together sharing across Manitoba and exploring home education. Let's pray together. Lord God, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for the opportunity that we have here in this province and have always had since the inception of Manitoba to be able to choose and direct our children's education freely, and we thank you for that. Lord, we just pray now as we talk about the home education of older children in the high school years, that you would just be with us, that you would guide us and direct us, and that you would provide families with the answers and the information that they're looking for. We just thank you for this time and pray your blessing on it. In Jesus' name, amen. So Anita, I'll turn it over to you to get us started, and I'll keep monitoring. But I am going to highlight your video so that everybody can see you as the primary one, and I'll temporarily mute myself here. So Anita, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to present here tonight, and thank you. I don't know that I'm a mastermind at anything, but thank you, Larissa and the Goose family, for being very, very willing to join tonight to help present this. So yes, we live a little bit south of Winnipeg. I live, my husband, on acreage where we've raised our 4 children. And we've been privileged to homeschool all 4 all the way from birth through the end of high school. So tonight I want to focus on just a few things. First of all, how my husband and I decided to homeschool. Secondly, can you really homeschool through high school without messing up your children's lives and their futures? Ways that we prepared our children for life. And fourthly, when life happens, and sometimes major trials, can homeschooling still work? And then a little bit on record keeping and transcripts, and I think Larissa's going to be presenting on that as well, and possibly the Gooses. And finally, what our young people, our young adult children, are doing now. So how we decided to homeschool. I was a teacher in the public system for a number of years, and I was really appalled at the lack of academics, as well as many of the other things that were being taught to children, even way back then. And even the good caring teachers were hampered because there were a lot of behavioral things in the classroom which slowed things down, and all the logistics lining up and all the extra time that are spent with a lot of wasted time. And I just decided that if I was ever married and had children of my own, that there was no way that I could have them in that system. And there had to be a better way. So when I did get married and have children, we attended a church where all of the families, all of the children there attended Christian school. So my husband and I considered options, and the decision to homeschool was actually a very easy one for us. And I can appreciate that for many families, it's not. For us, it was very, very easy, because to attend a Christian school, I would have had to get in the car, drive my children for at least half an hour each way, and have someone else teach my children. But to be able to afford somebody else to teach my children, I would have to go and teach other people's children to earn money to financially afford. So if that makes sense. So it just made absolutely no sense. And so the decision was made, we would homeschool. And besides that, we wanted to be with our children for the best hours of their day, rather than sending them off to be with other people for the best parts of their day. So we've taken the words from Deuteronomy 6:4-9 very seriously through the years. And I won't read it now, but you can read it. And I believe that a few weeks ago, Mark Reimer had read those in their presentation. So we've taken that very seriously. Deuteronomy 6:4-9. So one question that you might be asking yourself is, can I really teach my children all the way through high school? And what if I mess up? What if they're not adequately prepared for life and career and all of that? So for us, not every day was easy, and there were many general life challenges along the way, but we can say that God was faithful and that He sustained us as we looked to Him. We committed each school year and each day to Him. And though my husband and I didn't homeschool perfectly, and by any means, and we didn't always live life perfectly in front of our children, because we're imperfect and sinful human beings, we are thankful that we have the freedom to homeschool in Manitoba. And we're thankful that God led us to homeschool. And if we were to choose again, we would homeschool. So just want to encourage you with that. So many people have said to me over the years, oh, but you're a teacher, you can homeschool. And I've always been very quick to say that there are many, many people out there that aren't university trained teachers who do as well or much better than I do. And there's general agreement, and studies show that nothing beats one-on-one or small group learning. And if you're feeling like, I can't do this, there is so much support available, and even much more now than even when we started. There's the annual Matches Conference, which we would highly recommend. I think everyone on this call who's presenting would highly recommend the Matches Conference for so many reasons. And there's so many online videos, there's online workshops such as we're doing tonight, there's Facebook groups, there's curriculum suppliers. One big one in Manitoba is Heritage Resources, very willing to help. You might have friends who homeschool, there might be other families in your church. There's just so much support around, and seek that out. And homeschool support groups, by the way, I would highly recommend, even through the end of high school. We did it all the way through, and it was just fantastic. We had 6 or 8 core families that we went all the way through with, and it was great. You can ask more about that if you're interested. So the key ingredients that you need really to homeschool all the way through high school, you need dependence on God. You need to have love for your children and a desire to be with your children. and a strong commitment to homeschool through high school, because it is work, but it is worth it. So some parents feel that they don't have the ability to homeschool, especially in the high school years, because maybe they're not good in math, they're not good in science, they don't know much history, whatever the case may be. And that is reality sometimes. Sometimes people just aren't good in some of those subjects. But two things I want to say about that. The beauty of home education is that you can learn along with your children. And secondly, that there is amazing curriculum out there that just a lot of it even teaches directly to the student. So, and Bev and Diane did an amazing workshop a few weeks ago on curriculum choices, and we can certainly, those of us on here can certainly answer curriculum questions as well later if you are interested. So just some ways that we as a family, my husband and I, some ways that we prepared our children for life, because really in the high school years, well, all through, but really in the high school years, you're getting ready to launch them into life. And so I just have 13 points, mostly short ones in no particular order. Our goal in all of our home education years, besides spiritual and character goals, was to foster a love of reading, a love of learning, and to teach them how to learn and to think critically. So working on this in the early years stood our children in really good stead for high school. And I'd encourage you to lay the groundwork early for that. Love of reading, love of learning, how to learn, and so on. 2, academic goals, getting a good overall education so that they can achieve in whatever they choose to do. 3, we discovered what gifts and interests God granted each one, and we gave them opportunities to grow in those areas. By high school, we and our children had more direction in this. And for example, our son developed a great interest in politics from an early age. And from age 14, which is the legal age for this, he has actually been a member of the board of directors for our federal riding. And right after grade 12 for 4 months, and the following year for 6 months, he actually did an internship working for a cabinet minister in Ottawa. Through high school, he volunteered at an MP's office one afternoon a week, and he spent literally hundreds of hours volunteering during each election. And I can't tell you how many life skills he learned through all the various things he did there. And our girls also volunteered in elections and so on. So my son did all the required academics. He used to say to me, "Mom, I don't want to be a scientist." Well, I know, but we did require that he get a basic knowledge of science, but we allowed him to focus on a lot of history, a lot of current events, and as well as reading and studying about various politicians through the ages. And William Wilberforce became one of his heroes. And one of our daughters, on the other hand, is aiming at nursing. So she focused heavy duty on the sciences. So just discover those things and allow them to tailor make a lot of their education toward that. Number 4, in addition to academic goals, early on we looked at what they could do that might provide for future income. So they did piano lessons and they did swimming lessons. And 2 of our daughters achieved grade 10 level in piano. And one of them went on to complete her ARCT diploma in teaching piano, which is like a degree, really. And did much of that while still in high school. And incidentally, when you homeschool, you tend to have more time to pursue things like music. So 2 of our daughters earned all their credentials in lifeguarding and swim instructor, all of it while in high school. And it's provided good side income for each of them. each of those two girls worked full-time at it for the year after high school. And it's a great skill to have, and it just is, they just use more like just interacting with students, adults. They just they become leaders when they do things like that. Number 5, we put high priority on public speaking, and all of them excelled. They went all the way to competing at provincial level, which meant that they had competed 4 times with increasing difficulty. And to do that, we were in a homeschool 4-H club, and that was great. We did that for a few years. 6, we participated in a homeschool debate club for a while in high school. I wish we had done that a little bit longer. We visited, I knew a teacher in a private school who led a high-level debate team, so we actually visited his class once and watched some very high-level debate. And we did some in our homeschool group as well. 7, we did some mini courses in critical thinking and in logic, and the latter, the logic, was taught by a homeschooled young man online, a friend of theirs, actually in the States. So just a little tip: if you can't teach something, seek out someone else who maybe can. Number 8, we helped them to develop entrepreneurial skills through some home-based businesses. Number 9, they learned many general life skills, which they have more time to do when they're at home, such as just many, many things: cooking, gardening, canning, freezing, some mechanical, all those things. And one of them in grade 12, I believe, learned graphic design from Diane. And 10, we gave them opportunities to serve as leaders, and 2 of them have been active members of the Matches Conference Planning Committee. And one of them was doing that while she was in high school, and Diane apprenticed her, and then she did all the graphic design in her grade 12 year, I believe it was, for all the conference print materials. Number 11, and that was a skill that I wouldn't have had a hope of teaching her, but Diane can, so she did. And number 11, and I can't stress this enough, it was a very, very good idea that I learned very early on from a workshop, to give your children some deadlines. It's easy in homeschooling to sometimes just forget that. And we did that via music exams, swimming exams, preparation for their 4-H speeches, and so on. And it's just real life to have deadlines. A lot of jobs, you have to have deadlines. So that was a really good thing to teach them. 12, have some family serving opportunities even in the high school years. Make a meal for someone sick or someone who's had a new baby and deliver it together, or even when they get old enough, have them go and deliver it. And all of that develops character and caring for others. Number 13, we traveled whenever we could, incorporating much of our history learning. And even in Canada, there's a lot of War of 1812 history around Niagara Falls. When we went to Niagara Falls, they thought the falls were beautiful, but they were far more interested in a mile down the road seeing Laura Secor's house and the Isaac Brock Monument and that kind of thing. And it was just, they were so excited after studying that in our history. If you go to BC, there's the building of the railroad. There's lots of museums available. Scotland, Ireland, England, not everybody can do this, but my extended family is all over there, even my brother. So when 2 of my girls were ages 15 and 20, the 2 of them and I went over there, and we visited so many castles, cathedrals, abbeys, and so on. And each of my girls paid their own way. They earned it. They saved their money. And so it made it affordable, and given that we have places to stay. You may not have people and family in those kind of places, but maybe you do somewhere that you can just go and just make history come alive. Now the next section, when life happens, can can homeschooling still work? Like when trials come into your lives, because that is reality. And the short answer to that is yes. So a couple of things. My husband has had very serious, life-threatening illness all through my children's schooling, actually, including the high school years. And so we've sometimes had to adjust our schedule. And at times, academics had to be put on hold, or we just did what we could when we could. And through it, I believe that our children learned many real life things. And sometimes we just had to lay the textbooks aside and have extra read alouds and special family times. And we actually look back on that and with some really special memories, even though it was really hard what we were going through. But the Lord just sustained us. Also, our children learned such valuable lessons through our family caregiving for their grandparents, and right up until when they passed away. And this couldn't be learned from a textbook, and all the special bonds that they formed could not have happened if our children had been away at school all day and had homework all evening. It was hard, and but we persevered, and we homeschooled through it, and yet we needed to be flexible with our schedules when needed. So a little bit on record keeping, transcripts, post-secondary admission. I always submitted our government forms on time, outlining our objectives for each subject in September and achievement for the year, but giving just what was required. That was recommended to me early on by a wise veteran person, to don't give reams and reams of stuff. They don't require that. They don't want to read through all that, but just give them what they require. And I kept more detailed lists, more detailed things for ourselves, like book lists and all that kind of thing. Only one of our 4 children required a transcript for university entrance. I had not kept extremely detailed records, partly because difficult life circumstances, but I had kept some notes on what she had done, and we were able to pull it all together when we needed to, which was just about a year ago, I think. We are members of HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense, and you can ask any of us about that later. Very, very, very highly recommended. I would say don't homeschool without it. It is great. And a lady there was a tremendous help when we were at the transcript stage, and she pointed us to a transcript template on their website, which was really, really helpful. I think Larissa is going to talk some more about transcripts as well. I would recommend getting a transcript template, and I think there's more available now, even more all the time probably. And I would recommend filling it in at the end of each school year so that it is easier at the end and you're not scrambling and trying to pull it all together. And at the very least though, keep some good notes and do keep all of their work so that you can go back and have that record when you need it. One recommendation is that once one of yours knows what he or she wants to study, I would say visit that institution and find out what they require. They might require something totally different than what you think they require. So, and get it in writing. And for years, one of ours wanted to study veterinary medicine at University of Prince Edward Island. And so she and I went there. I'm from the Maritimes. It's not that we just popped down there for that. But we were going on a family trip anyway, and she and I went there, and we met with the dean, and he was very, very happy to meet with us. And he spent probably a good hour with us. He was extremely helpful and had a very positive outlook on homeschooling. She later changed to nursing, and I think part of that was her role in helping look after my parents. And so she and I met with a lady at Red River who was also very helpful. And so, so finally, what are our young adult children doing now? I'm happy to say all of them are productive citizens in society, and they're all active in their churches, and they range in age from 19 to 27. Our son, who's 27, he's the oldest, has his degree in business administration, and he's working in Winnipeg at a large insurance company. He's still an active of our federal riding board, and he chairs the policy committee on that board, and that's all volunteer work, and he has attended a few national political policy conventions. And so it's quite amazing that he actually has a little part in setting policy for the party, the political party. And during elections, we hardly see him. He's just busy. He's one of their main volunteers, and it's amazing all he does. Our first daughter number 1, has her ARCT and also her degree in music. And she had a very good home-based business here in teaching many private piano students. However, this past summer, she got married and moved to Ontario. So she is in the process of setting up her music studio there and getting students and starting into teaching piano there. And she will also fulfill her role very well as a pastor's wife. And so just having that music training and experience, it'll just work really, really well, I think, with her role as a pastor's wife. She is very, very passionate about homeschooling, and some of you will maybe have seen her at conference. She has been in charge of organizing the grad recognition for a few years, and she is very passionate about homeschooling, and I can tell you that was a non-negotiable for any potential suitor. So she just that was next to that he had to be a solid Christian. That was, I think, probably number 2 on the list. So she has the right man. And they will homeschool if they are blessed with children. And daughter number 2 has her grade 10 in piano, and she is considering teaching students in her home. They recently had a big move. They also moved down to Ontario, and she married a homeschool alumni. And so their intent, if blessed with children, is to homeschool. And both of them have been active in our church here, teaching Sunday school and so on, and with the music and other roles. And daughter number 3 is attending University of Manitoba, doing pre-nursing courses with the hope of getting into Red River, like I had mentioned. And she is a very capable and talented young lady in many areas. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that that's something that may have been of help to you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the evening and just find it beneficial. God bless you as you make your decision to homeschool, or if you are homeschooling already through the high school years. Just want to encourage you that if we can do it, you can too. Thank you.
Anita, thank you. Really appreciate your sharing your story and your experience. And what we'll do is we'll go through the presentations and then open it for questions. And I've asked people if they can be typing the questions into the chat box as we go along. And thank you for those that have done that already. And the speakers are seeing those. The one question that Faith asked, and we can ask speakers to address this as part of their presentations already. Any suggestions on how to have support from other homeschool families, moms, kids when your child is not willing to meet new people? So thank you for that question, Faith. And it's great to get a perspective on the the stage that people are at. Lorelei has a 15-year-old in grade 11. Faith has a 14-year-old in grade 9. Bless is starting with a 5-year-old in grade 1, and Julie has a 14-year-old in grade 9, and Crystal has a grade 10, 8, and 5. So certainly some diversity there, but great times ahead for a number of you. Who's going next? Is it Goose's Anita? I can't remember.
I think it's Nita, but you can go.
Larissa, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll get Phil and Tricia and Abigail to jump in, and I'll just highlight your video here, Larissa, so that everybody can see you without you disappearing. And Larissa, welcome here. Great to have you join us again this evening, and looking forward to you sharing more of your journey. I know that that you've had kids that are looking at careers, and I know that we've done some talking about agriculture apprenticeships and some of those kinds of things. So exciting stuff. But we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Gerald. I feel like I'm the newbie here. We have 8 children, but we've only graduated 1 of them so far. My husband Neil and I farm near Minnedosa, and we have 8 children. We've always homeschooled. Speaking of Anita's daughter, having homeschooling as a non-negotiable, that's the case for us. It was on the table before we were engaged even. So I always wanted to homeschool my kids and spend the time with them. I was never scared to homeschool all the way through high school. I knew that I would need to document and that I could outsource if need be, whether they take online courses or ask for help with tutoring or something like that. I just knew that there was resources out there. And part of that was that we did attend the Matches Conference from the time our oldest was 3.5. So we've been 15, 16 times already. And so I know that those supports are already there. As I mentioned, our oldest just graduated. This coming year, we will have kids in grades 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 12, and a 3-year-old tag along as well. So then I have to flip to the other side. Through high school, we were already using an all-in-one curriculum. I order a box and everything for that year comes together. Interestingly, the one we've chosen, which is called Heart of Dakota, also schedules several other curriculums as part of what they organize. So for example, we've done Institute for Excellence in Writing, we've done Essentials in Writing, they've pulled in BJU for literature, we've done Dave Ramsey's Personal Finance, all sorts of different things are pulled in for that. We've also subbed some subjects out. We've done some CLE. My guy in grade 11 right now, with him wanting to farm, he wants to streamline things, so we've pulled in some ACE this coming year. Our kids have always used teaching textbooks. That's not the math that's recommended through Heart of Dakota, but that's what works for our family. We've also adapted things, pulled from one year and done them in a different year. We've also cut a full credit course down to just a half so that it would combine with another one we wanted to take so that we weren't overdoing our schedule. We've also adapted some things because of learning disabilities. We made sure that they were getting the LA and the science they needed in high school and the math, but some of their other courses could come from other levels. They didn't have to be grade level equivalent necessarily on paper. I did a lot of reading aloud, even for my kids through high school, especially for my one with Irlen syndrome. She struggles to read, similar to dyslexia, but a different cause. So we've changed things up to make it work for our family and to make sure we were covering everything that we were required to cover. Some of the benefits that we've found for homeschooling all the way through high school, not just up until high school, were because it's not 9 to 3:30, they have time for individual pursuits. They have time to make their own schedule. So our older ones sometimes would do a bit of homework in the evening so that they could sleep in the mornings, that kind of thing. They've had volunteer opportunities during the school day that they wouldn't have had if they were in public school. And then just the family time and relationships is such a total blessing to have that time with the kids. Even if they're in the room half the time, you know that they're not, what their influences are and that kind of thing. And for us, a big part of it is what we are able to teach and how we teach it. So not only adapting for learning challenges, but also spiritually, we can teach them our worldview. We can teach them the truths about creation and not have them always been fed the lies that they teach in public school. We can have Bible be a full credit for them. Those kinds of things are very important for us as well. So what did I do for high school that was different from when they were younger? There's really only two main things. One of them is that I was more diligent about compiling a portfolio for them. I always kept samples, but in high school, I kept more just in case, and then weeded it out as we got further away from those courses. But make sure I got beginning at middle and end of the school year to show growth, and then anything else that was excellent or showed that growth in a different way. And then the other big thing was that I tracked marks for a transcript. Gerald, I don't know if you have the sample page, if you can put that up or not. Sorry, I'm just checking to see which one it was. I have a sample page that looks, no, sorry. This is some of the marking pages that I've done. And so I just put all the subjects on as few pages as possible and have places to keep the marks so that they're all in one place. I don't have to run around searching. It's taken me a few years to get there, but now I have for each student on just 2 or 3 pages to keep track of the marks. That makes it much easier for me to put into the transcript at the end of the year. It's not essential, but it saves me a lot of time and energy, especially since I'm tracking multiple kids at the same time. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've had 3 high schoolers all at the same time. Okay, that's the website, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you can keep it up there if you want, Gerald. We did very few marks prior to high school, basically only math, science, and then if we did tests for grammar. So it was a challenge for me to learn how to use things like rubrics. So for subjects that don't have a right or wrong, yes or no type answer, how do you grade that? And so I used rubrics for a lot of things, and it was a challenge for me to work out a rubric that meant something for us. So it applied to the things they needed to learn, but wasn't overly complicated. And here's a quick one that we had for world religions. We had to do several books for that course. And the content for what they put on the pages was less important because we discussed the books as well. But for the output they had on paper, the things that were important to us were that they were on time, that they followed the instructions, and that what they did was complete, and their neatness, the time they invested in their creativity. And so that was just a simple rubric that would quickly give me 50 points. And that was an easy way to figure out how much I could allot to each book so that I didn't have to depend on how I felt about that student that day. So that's how I find that rubrics are helpful. The other thing I learned...
Larissa, if there's any of those
yeah.
pages you want to share, I can do that. I found them. So.
Okay, very good. So where was I here? I also learned how to weight marks. So for example, when we are doing literature, every book is worth the same amount. You just find an average, it's easy. But for composition, say 70% of the mark would be from composition and 30% was from grammar. So I learned to multiply that 70%, whatever percentage they got on that course, times the 70, and you get a number. And then the grammar mark times 30 to get a number. And then you could add those two numbers together to get a percentage out of 100. That kind of thing made it easy to not have to try to do really complicated math in my head. I found a way to do that, and I'm willing to talk to anyone about that in more detail if you want later. And then Gerald put up the web page for the transcript I chose to purchase. I knew that I could sink a lot of time and energy into making my transcripts look good and rearranging the pages and trying to make it all even and all that kind of thing. And so that's a weakness I have. I knew I would fiddle. And so I knew with 8 kids coming through that an investment in a transcript program was a wise use of our money. And so I bought this Homeschool Transcript Pro, and so I don't waste time formatting. I don't have to check after one kid is done. I have to go find a new one because it doesn't work the same way for the next one, because this works for all of them. And I can track all 8 of my children on it. So once I do the setup for each one, so their personal info, the school information, their extracurricular activities, and I add to that each year. And their course descriptions available upon request, I put on the back just so that if I keep course descriptions on my computer, and I don't submit those to the province, and I won't submit them to post-secondary unless they're requested. Once I've done that, then for each course, all I need to do is select on the screen what type of course it is it English or math or fine arts, the name that I want to give that course, the number of credits that it's worth, whether it's a half credit or 1 credit or 2 credit course, and then the mark. And I chose to set mine up by subject area, so English, math, social sciences, natural sciences, that kind of thing, because I had a son who started high school in grade 8 and he will graduate after grade 11, so I knew that doing it by year would just get really confusing. And so this is what their transcripts look like. I've blacked out my students' information on it, but it looks really professional and I didn't have to spend a lot of time formatting. And then the second page has their volunteer and courses and other things that they've done, and there's the where they can ask for the information, and then the school information and my signature goes there when it's complete. So that ends sort of my transcript part of it. And then how do I track a course? What does a course mean? How do you do that when you're homeschooling? For me, any course that was an actual curriculum, whether that was ACE or BJU or Heart of Dakota, if it was a course from a curriculum company, it's a course for us. That's a no-brainer as long as they complete most of it. I sometimes chose to ask them to complete that differently. Maybe we do it orally, or I'd give them something more creative to do than what's assigned. We were flexible that way, but as long as we covered the content of the course, we considered it a full credit. But there are other things that I wanted to include in their stuff that wasn't a course that you could find. And so things like Bible, I get my kids to track hours. How long did you spend reading the Bible, praying, journaling, those kinds of things? Reading a devotional, reading certain books that I assign sometimes. Track your hours, and every 120 hours is 1 credit. And then volunteering was another one that we did that way. Now my one in grade 12 is taking a course at ACC. She's taking American Sign Language. So that will be one of the things that will go on her transcript that my other kids probably won't have at that point. My oldest, he graduated this spring, and he had asked for an application to a hairstyling course. He wants to be a barber and had not filled it out yet. And mid-COVID, he gets a phone call, would you like one of our spots for July? And so he started Hairstyling Academy on July 6th, and we'll finish next April sometime, Lord willing. And so that's, he's loving it and doing far better than he ever did in our homeschool. He's acing his tests and just loving the course. So that's my goal, is not how well they do necessarily in high school, but that we give them the skills to be able to learn when they find what they want to learn. As Gerald mentioned, we have one in grade 11 who is definitely going to farm, and I'm giving him credit for an agricultural introduction to agriculture, probably, as opposed to an apprenticeship. To get an apprenticeship through the colleges is going to be a lot more work than I'm willing to put in at this point. That would be an option, but with the number of kids I have, I just can't do that extra work that would be required. We'll do it as an intro to ag, and he'll get credits for his work on the farm. I just took a quick look at it. I'm going to have a high schooler every year till 2035. So maybe you should call me back in another decade or two, Gerald. I'm looking forward to finding out navigating what each child needs. We have one who at 10 wants to be a missionary. So his focus will be on things like geography and languages and music and those things and Bible, of course, those things that will give him a good foundation in the areas that he's interested in. I have another that might want to be a vet. And so if that's still the case in 10 years, then we will have to go heavy on the sciences and that kind of thing. But my confidence isn't in whether or not I can do it, but in God's leading for each one of them to meet their needs and to lead them into the adults that he desires for them to be. So thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Larissa. Great to hear more of your story and to get to know you even better. Exciting things. It's amazing when I hear you say what year did you say you were going to be homeschooling high school through?
2035, I think Timothy will graduate.
2035. That's cool. That's cool.
He'll start grade 9 the year that the last one graduates. So that's the only time I'll only have one, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So that's great to hear, and I'm glad that you're willing to have us. You're on the long-term program here, and we'll be able to check in with you regularly as you go through those high school years and share that adventure on an ongoing basis with us. So that's wonderful. Let's keep the questions coming in from everyone. One of the things that I'll ask just for the participants to be able to provide some feedback to our speakers as they prepare for questions. What are you most concerned about as you're homeschooling high school? So what's on the front of your mind? And I'm not going to say worries, but concerns or things that are on your mind. So if you could type those into the chat window, that'd be wonderful. So Larissa, we'll come back to you with more questions. And thanks for your presentation. And I'm going to now welcome Phil and Tricia Goose and their daughter Abigail. We're great to have you join us. They're familiar faces from the Matches Conference, and we really appreciate their support and their willingness to share with other families, and this is a great opportunity to do that. We try to have these evenings sort of like visit in the living room around the kitchen table. So tonight we're visiting a number of homes, and here we are zooming into the Goose home, and it's not just Phil and Tricia and Abigail. We've got some others there, which is wonderful. So we'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and we'll pin your video and say welcome here. Great to have you join us this evening, and let's get to know the Goose family. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. You're definitely gonna be the black sheep again. Really appreciate the presentations from Anita and Marissa. How we got going, Trish and I knew we would homeschool before we were even married. We had talked about it. We knew friends and family that did it. Had I known that she was going to be such an enthusiastic home educator to the degree that she decided to pursue a midwifery degree online and then abandoned me in 2014 and tell me that it was now my responsibility, I may have questioned her zeal and tried to tamp it down a little bit. But Trish has really enjoyed the formative years. I couldn't have done it. I'm just not compassionate enough. The home education journey for our children changed overnight. Trish began to practice as a midwife in Southern Health in January of 2014. And by the time she got home from her first day at work, the kids were struggling with tears, and she asked how it went. And their united response was, "He only let us have one cup of tea." And she looked at me with disbelief and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, they can't have all that caffeine." She said, "It's herbal." And so they proceeded to make more tea. I don't know if Trisha's willing. She got called out to a birth in the middle of the night last night, and she's a little tired. But if she'd be willing to share just a little bit of an introduction of how we went through the formative years and then into high school. Our eldest was, Abby, you were in grade 12 when Mom?
I was
Or grade 11?
16 when you started working, so I was grade 11 because I graduated at 17.
Yeah, so Trish took them to that point, and if you've got anything that you'd like to stick in there, that'd be great.
Right on. Well, first of all, Abigail is with us, then our daughter Annabelle, and then Phil, our youngest daughter Zara, and then another daughter is hiding. That's Alexandra, and our son Caleb is not here. But so we did homeschool our kids right from the beginning, and it was always something that I have not one regret. I enjoyed every minute of it. It wasn't easy, but some of the things that that Anita mentioned and Larissa mentioned that really stuck out in my mind when I think about my homeschooling is I did keep records all the way along, perhaps not the way it would have been done in school, in the public school system or a private school system, but it was a record keeping system that worked for me. And at one of the conferences, like Anita mentioned, I realized that I had permission to just give what was required in the way of information. So I did submit just what was required, but I kept better records for me. So like Anita did, when it came time to the high school transcript time, I did have to go back and look to sort of see what year was biology and what year was geography and all these different things. But it was easily accessible. And like Larissa mentioned, I kept highlights. So if something really stood out to me that the kids had done well or was unique or something like that, they were easy to pull from. And I did find a free transcript online and fiddled with it, but I found and saved one that worked. And I sat down with my kids actually, and some of the marks we debated. There were subjects that my kids loved, and there were subjects that the kids maybe wasn't their favorite. So I thought they would have done really, like I thought they did really well, but because they had such, they didn't enjoy that subject. Like, I don't care, give me 50, just pass me. And I'm like, but you did so much better than 50. Or they're like, yeah, I think I need a 90. I'm like, you ain't getting a 90 in that class. So we did negotiate, but I felt like I could back it up because I did have tests and I did have projects, and we did a lot of reading aloud where I would require the kids to make something that they learned from our read alouds, and they maybe don't remember those things. And so those were all the different things that I was considering when I was thinking of marks. And in the younger years, testing wasn't too important to me, but timeliness was. And I did have guidelines and deadlines for myself that I did put towards the kids or put on the kids. And they might not have realized it, but I always planned a 4-day week when the kids were younger. And with the idea that if Phil as a farmer would come in and say, I'm going to John Deere today, it didn't totally disrupt my school day. The kids were able to go with him and we didn't fall behind. But it also allowed for the kids that were less enthusiastic for their favorite subjects, not favorite subjects, to, I could use that, well, everybody else is done in 4 days, but this isn't done. So it's Friday and you have to do school today because you didn't finish this. So that was one of the things that I learned early on, is that completing things in a timely manner was actually really important to me. And so when I think of one of the things that was really important to me through our homeschooling year was I wanted our children to be friends. I wanted our children to be confident in who they were. I wanted our children to learn how to learn. And I did want them to value submitting something that was well done and on time. I wanted them to care about their work. One really fun experience we had is our daughter Alexandra, who is hiding. In her grade 12, she did a baking and pastry arts program concurrent with her homeschooling. And she did that in the Louis Riel School Division. And I had just, for some reason, Phil and Alexandra went for this interview, and Phil went along with her probably because she might not have even had her driver's license at that point. And so he introduced Alexandra to the principal, but then he let Alexandra sort of sell herself. And although they weren't sure what to do with a homeschooler, they found a way to make it work. and it was very little work on our behalf. They wanted to do the work for us. So it was a very positive experience. They offered for her to do her pre-calculus at the school besides her baking and pastry program. And she said, no, she would rather do that at home. So even though she was doing a baking and pastry degree, she still did a pre-calculus at home, and she did biology. So our schooling year for Alexandra looked different that year because she was away from the home all day doing a baking and pastry arts, but at night we would do biology or math. So anyways, then what were you going to say something? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. And then, sorry, I'm going to not talk so much now. Apparently I'm really tired. I'm going to let Abigail explain her journey a little bit, and then if Anna and Zara would like to share a little bit.
I'll take
let
over
them.
again as the homeschool dad. Thanks, son. So Abigail, as her eldest, she has gone through Red River College. So she'll share a little bit about that and where she's at now as an encouragement. And Abby, you can just take it and tell what you had to do for transcripts, all that from your perspective. Then Alexandra, who Trish just highlighted, did the baking and pastry, which required one wrecked Honda Civic driving back and forth to Winnipeg every day.
My wrecked Honda Civic.
And just a different school year. And she was 17 when she graduated, and she graduated on a Friday from her baking and pastry and began Monday morning in Rosenort, 45-minute drive, as their head baker. Because they said, well, do you think you could run the bakery? And she said, well, of course. She's very confident. Currently, she's working in British Columbia and has, I'd like her to explain this a little bit, but without any other experience scholastically in as a chef, she, just by her experience previous in the bakery and other cooking, went from a line cook to within, what was it, 3 weeks? She was what was it called? A first cook, and then she went back last winter and they made her a sous chef, which is unheard of without any formal training. So she's going back out there in another few weeks to continue to ski and do a little bit of work, which for Alexandra is probably 50 hours a week. Annabelle, straight in front of you here, is, how old are you, 18?
18.
And Zara, 16. They both finished formally, really it was first year university this year at home, and they'll each be able to share a little bit of their perspective. So I turn it over to you, Abby, and then I can cap it off.
Great. So as my dad mentioned, I graduated from Red River College in 2018. So I graduated from homeschooling when I was 17, and I was just working, and I had no intentions of going to school. I knew that I wanted to write. Like some common stories in here, I thought I was going to be a vet for a while, and then I hit high school and I'm like, wow, I hate doing science. This isn't happening. So I wrote my first novel when I was 14. I self-published that, and then I really discovered my love of writing at that time. So I was 19 when I went to creative communications at Red River College, which was a very spur of the moment decision. I literally went into our local newspaper and asked him to give me a job. I was working at Sobeys at the time in Steinbach, and he said, well, I'll give you a job, but why don't you look into this program? And so I looked into creative communications, and from what we had heard from people that we had contacted in the homeschool sphere, Red River is hard to get into for homeschoolers without a high school diploma. So there was a very rigorous application process that I went through. Out of the approximately 300 plus applicants every year, they accept 50 people into the program, and of those, only about 30 graduate. I believe my year was less than that. So when I got in, it was a very exciting thing for me because it felt it felt very validating of my experience homeschooling, I suppose. It just reminded me that, yes, I can do this. It was, even when things got hard in school, I remember going in for the first test to get into the program, and I didn't know what a bubble test was. And I asked the girl beside me, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And she didn't make it through, but I did. So I guess I did something right. But there were these little things that really were hard when I was in college, but then I could look back and say, you know what, I'm here. I can do this. I deserve to be here. So that extra fight to get in actually, I think, is what got me through. So looking back on that application or the transcript process, like my mom said, it was a little bit of a negotiation. I remember sitting down with her and just talking through, hey, okay, so how do you feel like you did in this? And I think we can be our own worst critics. Like my mom said, I would be like, well, you know what? I know that I did not do my best in science because this subject did not click. And so I would grade myself harshly, but then we'd go back and we'd look at stuff that I had done and we'd bring it back to, okay, well, how well did you meet our soft skill goals, such as dedication, being on time, all these things that aren't as tangible as a mark, as an 80% or a 90% or a 50%. So when we did that, I think that was very beneficial for me to be able to be a part of that process, because I felt like then I owned what I had done. And even after I graduated, I still did some courses that we had purchased, some curriculum that I didn't require to graduate, but that I was still interested in doing. We did Matthew C, and I went back and I did their stewardship, which is more of their essentials, but I wanted to understand credit and I wanted to understand mortgages and all of these things that aren't necessarily taught if you're doing calculus, right? So there's a great opportunity to allow your kids to take ownership of their learning, because for me, that's really what it felt like. I had the opportunity to say, you know what, I really love writing. I'm going to write an entire novel and we're going to count that as a credit.
So where are you at now, Abby?
So now I am a marketing coordinator for a multi-million-dollar company. We mostly sell in the States. I work completely from home, and I think part of what it has enabled me to work from home is really that homeschool experience. Being able to make connections outside of just my immediate peers that I am forced to be in a group with. So yeah, I am working full-time doing that. I also started my own small art business. I design and run my own website, and I do some freelance work on the side.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to try to coax Alexandra to just give a brief. Alexandra wanted to go to school for recess and gym. We refused to let her. And once she hit high school, she never ever wanted to go to school again, I think.
No, I don't say that.
No? Still wanted
I
gym?
still want to go.
Yeah.
The bus ride.
So she's the one that did the baking and pastry program, and now she's working as a sous chef and serving tables because it makes way more money a couple nights a week in British Columbia in Invermere at the Panorama Resort. Anything you'd like to share to encourage students or parents?
I would say, I definitely did learn a lot of my skills from being homeschooled. I would say it definitely gave me a really good work ethic, even just being dedicated and going above and beyond what was required of me. I feel like that's always helped in the workforce, and it's definitely helped me where I am today. Like my dad said, without the formal training of being a chef, but being able to get up to my role as a sous chef. I definitely did want to go to school when I was little, just for the social part. Staying through high school, I still just like had friends, and I just like thought I'd be normal if I went to school. So I really wanted that. But I am really thankful for the experience that I had, and the opportunity just to learn at home. I did definitely get to do the courses that interest me, and I got to learn like just how to learn, like what worked for me. So going to my baking program when I was 17 was definitely a good experience. I think then I realized that I actually didn't want to go to school. Like I really just didn't care to have 2 tests a week. I didn't really want to study for them all the time, and I didn't really want to wake up early all the time or be busy every day. But overall, like the program was really good for me, I think, but it definitely did make me really thankful to not have gone to school.
They wouldn't let her nap in the middle of the day.
I know. It's
Or drink
tragic.
coffee.
So it was definitely an adjustment. And then after that, going straight into the workforce, I definitely feel like I excelled. Just having that foundation and that like work ethic and always being very independent, I definitely feel like that has helped in my career.
Thank you.
Thanks, sweetie.
So Anna and Zara Zara was 10 when I took over the duties of homeschool dad. So she's been the most traumatized, I think. Zara's at 10 years old did a book called The History of Medicine on her own just for fun, and decided that she wanted to get into medicine back then. We've always told them whatever you want to do, that's fine. Annabelle, one of our main outings, educational outings throughout the last 6 years has been our Costco trips. It's a 35-minute drive, and we can do various things like Adventures in Odyssey on the way there and back. Now the kids don't want to listen, but I still do, so we don't. And definitely the Tim Hortons on the way home. One day, Annabelle said she was struggling a little bit with what do I want to do, and the pressures of people saying, what do you want to do? And so she just said, Dad, I think I want to be a lawyer. And I said, you can't. And I explained to her why that wasn't a good career, because I didn't approve of many of the lawyers, the way they lived their lives. And then I said, oh, but there's Paul Ferris at HSLDA. Okay, yeah, you can be one of those. But she waffled back and forth. I thought medicine, I want to be with Zara. So anyway, all along we've just said, but that's not who you are, right? Your career isn't who you are. It doesn't matter. So at this point, Zara's probably bailed on the whole doctor thing, and that's fine, right? And Anna is now more set on beginning the pursuit of a career law. But for them, Trisha used to test them and everything, but I was an anti-tester, so I didn't test them at all. I didn't require them to do tests. Just my worldview. But this year, so Zara was still 15 when she was done all of her grade 12 courses. Anna was 17, done all of her grade 12 courses. So they're too young, right? I said, you're not going to university. No way. So they did advanced calculus, advanced biology, and advanced chemistry and calculus. So that was their year this year, and I introduced them to testing. So it was a necessary evil. So I guess what I'm trying to say through this is that you can focus as they decide what they want to do. You can pull together a plan for them and bring it forward, and it doesn't have to have been consistent all the way through. So it was quite a shock to them, and I expected they would get hundreds, and when some of the 50s and 60s started rolling, I had to really quickly say, no, guys, when you go to university, they mark on the curve. You guys got 90 and 95. That's good. Don't worry. Quit crying. I'll take you to Tim Hortons. Come on, guys. Let's go on a trip. And, not to damage them any further emotionally. So that's been the year for us. We did Math UC all the way through, and Apology is Science. And they have been self-taught mostly since Trish went to work. And that was very easy with the curriculum in Math UC because there's videos, they teach it, and I would go through and correct their math with them. I I love math. I'm good at, I enjoyed science, but this year, calculus, I don't remember doing it. I know I did. It's a lot of years ago. And I just say, guys, you're teaching me here. Like, you know, and I would correct their work for them, but I wasn't trying to keep up. And your kids will, if they get that desire to learn, they will succeed as they apply themselves. And so you don't have to know it yourself. You don't have to be proficient in it. You have to be their cheerleader. You have to help them with discipline. You have to help them with a lot of encouragement and remind them that their education isn't who they are, right? It's their character development is who they are, and education is just part of that. So is there anything you'd like to share, Anna, about where you're at, how homeschooling went for you, and what your plans are for the future?
Definitely for homeschooling this year, it taught me that I didn't have to know everything. I could ask Zara for help, because if I was really good at something, usually Zara wasn't so good, but if Zara was really good, I was not good. So we got to like kind of lean on each other. And I remember one test, Dad was like, girls, how can you always get the same answers right and the same answers wrong? He's like, I know you're not cheating, but like, what are you doing? And then one day we were testing and he was on the phone and me and Zara didn't say a word. And Dad's checking my test. He goes, Annabelle. And then he checks Zara and goes, what? And then he goes, girls, what colors are the rainbow? And we said them, we go, oh, and ivory. And he goes, it's indigo. And we're like, we both wrote ivory. And he said, I thought you guys were cheating, but what happened? And apparently we just learned so well together that we both got the same mistakes. So learning, it just knowing that you don't have to be good at everything, you can ask for help. So that was really good for me, because I have struggled to admit when I'm wrong. So that was good to know that I didn't have to be perfect, because there's other resources.
But at the same time, then Dad would be in the barn working because he's busy, and he didn't want to take the time to sit down and learn calculus with us. So sometimes we were able to ask for help, but sometimes you just had to sit down and spend hours at the table until you figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, we could ask for help, but sometimes there wasn't, like, even Dad couldn't figure it out sometimes. There's have to figure it out on our own. We have to learn it by ourselves sometimes.
And so this year especially, I would tell them, guys, you can use the teacher manual. That's fine. I want you to work backwards though. Mm-hmm. It's only a tool for learning. And in the real world, this is how it works. You can go and Google something and figure it out, right? So a lot of it was focused on not the strict guidelines given by maybe the public system, but a real world view that we were able to incorporate into their learning and just encourage them to use all the available tools at hand. But now you're responsible, not just, it's not about the right answer, it's about learning how to do it. And so are you guys feeling like you've had the best last 6 years of your life and anybody in the world, or could there have been improvements? No, don't answer that. Anyway, I think that's, we'll cut it off there, Gerald. I hope that's been helpful and encouraging, and I hope the girls' stories have been good to hear.
Well, I think more than good to hear. It's been fascinating to be able to sit around the kitchen table. I assume that you're in a place something like that together with you, and to be able to share share with you and to hear your stories as a family. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. We're going to stop now just for a bit, and I'm just going to ask first of all whether Larissa or Anita have got any other comments of things that, as we've gone through some of the things that they want to add in before we jump into questions. Any comments from either one of you? Okay. So let's spend some time just going through some questions then, and I'm going to make it so that if you select the gallery view in your computer, you'll be able to see us all at one time. and then you can chat any of the questions that you have into the chat box. Just as a little bit of a resource, I'm just going to take a minute while you're thinking of some questions. I'm just going to take a moment to share a couple of things with you as far as some news. One thing that I just want to share, a resource that I just came across today. That as you have people that are asking you questions about this home education thing and how do you know that your kids are going to turn out all right. This is a fact sheet that I came across. A friend of ours, Dr. Deborah Bell, who's from the United States and Pennsylvania, was involved in co-authoring an American Psychological Association paper on homeschooling under quarantine. The American Psychological Association has been actually quite critical of home education for many, many years. But they've published this, and basically it's a summary of home education and why it works and how to do it. It's just a two-page fact sheet that's a great resource from an international perspective to be able to give to your friends and neighbors and maybe your parents that may be asking you questions about this thing that you're doing. So I just wanted to share that with you quickly as a potential resource that you could use and utilize. And I'm now just trying to figure out how to get back to my screen. There it is. Stop share. So some of the questions that we've got here in front of us, we had a question from Crystal. Her concern is to know if she's doing enough for her children to prepare them for post-secondary. Are their courses sufficient enough, and if they completed them well enough? And then tied together to that, how do you know what marks to give your child, and what if the marks you give are not accurate enough? I know that Larissa, you talked a little bit about that already. Do you have any further comments on marks and the perennial question of how do I know that I'm doing enough?
I still struggle with am I giving the right grade for this kind of thing? I don't know if that's something that I'll ever resolve completely for myself. I'm a type A. I want black and white answers, and you just don't have those in marking. So I don't know if I have any more to add to that one. But the other part of the question, how do you know if you're doing enough? Part of it is having support groups. I am part of ones online for our curriculum, and when there's options, people say, well, should I do this or this? And often people will come up and say, well, this one's more of an AP course, an advanced course, and this one is more if you're not going into STEM, or those kinds of observations from others help for me to choose what direction to take for specific curriculum for a specific subject. And my oldest ones have not been hardcore STEM, going straight to university from high school kind of people. So we haven't done some of those more advanced sciences and maths kind of thing. But I think, yeah, having the input of others on what level a certain course is at is really helpful.
Thank you very much. Goose family, any comments on those questions?
For instance, so for our kids, we did math and C. We did, for the most part, every practice problem.
You're coming through very faintly, Phil. I'm not sure why exactly, but maybe speak up or move closer.
Can you hear me now, or is that better?
You're still pretty faint. You guys were really clear there. Let me try pinning yours and see whether that makes any difference. Let's try that. Go for it.
How's that? Is that any better?
I can see. Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Any better? My observation was that for our kids, we did the whole math. For our kids, we did the whole chemistry book. We did the whole physics book. We did the whole biology book. They read every chapter, every paragraph. They did all the questions that were there. Whereas I remember my own high school years, the teacher would assign a fraction of some chapters, and that was where the marks came from, right? So if your child is going through and doing a whole textbook, you're so far ahead of anybody in the public school system that, yeah, you're doing enough. And if they're dedicated to get through a whole textbook, they're learning all they need to learn. As far as the marks go, they know what they know regardless of what the mark is. Give them whatever mark they need to get into the course. It's just a necessary evil.
Phil, do you have two microphones that you maybe change between them on your device? No? Okay, because your sound was very good there for a bit, and all it might be because of others that aren't muted like me. Let me try muting.
Can you hear me now? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Oh, okay, well, that's better. Okay, did you get anything of what I said earlier? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Your kids probably are learning a lot more if they're doing the whole textbook than anyone in the public system, and they do know what they know. So assigning a mark is sort of arbitrary, unless the mark is great for you to analyze where they're at and decide if they need a more in-depth, learning. But other than that, a mark is just, if you're going to go to post-secondary, give them what they want to hear, and your child's going to make it or not, regardless of what mark you assign.
I'll interject here and say I didn't do the whole book. I'm the only one who was homeschooled through high school by my mom, and she let me challenge tests. So
But I didn't make them do
yeah,
tests.
so everything will depend on your on the style that you do it. I don't think I learned any less, but the way we did it was with Math UC, you have systematic review, as well as learning whatever concept is brought forward in that lesson. I would do a few of the questions, like the new concept, to make sure I got it. I would do all the systematic review, and then I would challenge the test. And I felt like because I was getting the full scope of the concepts that were supposed to be brought forward in that lesson, that was how I knew that I was doing enough. I was doing my due diligence to make sure that I wasn't just like brain shredding everything that I was learning in order to pass a test.
Thanks, thanks for that. A number of questions about credits have been asked, and one of the things that I'd like to point out is that you'll find, this isn't a very good picture, but you'll find on the Manitoba Education website, you'll find a page that basically goes through what are the credits that are part of a normal grade or high school program. So 30 credits is the total over the course of grade 9 through 12. And in each one of the years, there are requirements. For example, there's a math credit in each one of the 4 years. There's an English credit in each, English language arts credit in each one of the 4 years, and a physical education health credit that's required in each one of those years. So this, you can use it, you don't have to do it in the same sequence, and there isn't a specific curriculum that meets these requirements, but it gives you a guideline of how to fill out and how to complete what's there. So 17 credits of required subjects and 13 credits of the optional. Now they're not optional to have the credits; they're optional in terms of which ones you do and choose. And they're all listed there. So that's all available. And if you go to the Matches website, you'll find a link of how to find this on the government website. So that information is there on credits within the Manitoba system. Anita, any comments from your perspective on the questions of how to do enough or on credits for further clarification?
Sorry, I was. Can you repeat the question, Gerald, please?
Yes, I can repeat it. I just had to unmute myself. So on the question of how do you know that you're doing enough? How do you know what marks to assign? And then basically you know, the whole thing of you know, how do you assemble this program of credits?
Well, we looked at, I don't think it was that exact thing, but something on the government website or something, just to know what was required each year, like a math, what sciences, you know, English, and so on. And so we made sure that we had all of those. For language arts, we did different components, our public speaking, our writing, our literature studies. And by the way, Progeny Press literature study guides, I very, very highly recommend those. Gave our children some choice in that, like here's a list of books for, you know, grade 10, for instance, what ones would you like to study this year? So on like that. So some of those, like Progeny Press has an answer guide. Some of them were very objective, like math, science. When there's an answer key and tests, it's very, very easy to assign a mark. We just took all the tests, for instance, all the math tests from pre-calculus year, whatever, and averaged them, and that was their mark. And then some, like English, are more subjective. But I would just encourage you that in public school, in private school, it's also subjective in some of those subjects, in history and language arts. So I just looked at their work, basically, how well it was done, how thorough their answers were, or if they just gave the bare minimum, or if it was obvious that they went above and beyond. You know, just kind of decided on the mark like that. I also gave credit for different other things, like volunteer. What else did we get? For phys ed, for instance, I was aware that they are required to have some of that each year. So like they're the ones that did lifeguarding and swim instruction training, that was part of that. And we also, if they were playing soccer or if they were playing volleyball, you know, just kind of some of that is objective, like the marks they got from the pool in their courses, and some of that is subjective too. So don't know if that completely answers it, or.
That's great, Anita. I appreciate that very much. I know that there's, I'm sure, you know, lots of questions that people have, and we aren't able to answer all of them tonight, but I think we've downloaded a very significant amount of information and experience from the three homes that are represented here this evening. And I hope that it's been useful. I'm not sure if there's any other questions. Don't want to keep people any longer than is necessary, but any other questions that anybody has that we haven't been able to address yet here this evening. While you're thinking about that, I just wanted to let you know what's coming up in the series in the next weeks. Next week, September 29th, we'll be having a session for parents and grandparents. So this is, if you want to invite your parents, so your children's grandparents, or your family or friends that have questions about home education and they're wondering about this thing, what we'll be doing is going through some of the questions, is this legal, do the kids turn out all right, basically some of the research and some of the experience, and sharing that with parents and grandparents. The next week after that, the 6th of October, we'll have a session on teaching the Bible, which you've heard about here this evening. On the 20th, we'll be talking about home education and the father's role. And then on the 27th, a session on special needs in home education. And those are the ones that we have planned at this point. And if there's interest in further subjects, we can schedule more. We'll be planning on having another one, at least one more, probably in November sometime, on preparing for progress reports as they're due in January. So we'll be providing a preparatory session for that later in the fall. Just really appreciate Anita, the Goose family, and Larissa for all of your input. And I'm just going to ask whether they have any closing comments or words to pass on to the many families that are online here before we break for this evening. Anita, any thoughts that you haven't been able to share yet that you'd like to?
I don't think so. I hope it was really encouraging for all of you who are wondering about homeschooling through high school. I hope it was really encouraging to see the Goose family and to see some of the products of homeschooling. I think that always really encouraged me. And if come to the Matches Conference, whether we have one next spring, who knows? We don't know. We didn't this year because of COVID. We couldn't. But once that's up and running, please go to conference. It's just amazing. You learn from the sessions, you learn from each other. There's mentor booths. There's just all sorts of connections that are made, and it's just, I'd really encourage that. And yeah, just again, if our family could do it, I know you can too. And I hope it was encouraging tonight.
You're still muted, Gerald, so I'm just going to take the ball from Anita. One thing I noticed is that we didn't answer the question Faith had at the beginning about how you find support when your children are not interested in making friends and being out there. I have found that as my oldest ones have gotten older, they have lost that interest in being involved in a support group like we were when they were younger. And so I've attended, but they don't anymore. So my younger ones still sometimes go to the activities that are planned by the group, but I've had to find my support elsewhere. I do a lot online through the curriculum that we use. Every grade has another Facebook page, and so we do a lot of back and forth with those moms, both just in a chatting supportive way and specifics about the curriculum. And I also travel an hour every month to go to a support group in the Austin McGregor area. That Christian fellowship of other homeschooling moms is absolutely invaluable for me, and so it's worth the investment for me to travel to do that. There isn't a Christian group that meets regularly in my area, and so yeah, sometimes you just have to do it without them. If they will join you for an activity, that's great, but if not, get it for yourself because it's invaluable.
Larissa, thanks for jumping in, and thanks for telling me that I was muted. What I was saying about the conference is we will have a conference next year in 2021. What it will look like, how we will be able to do it, is to be determined. But with the number of people that are in Manitoba, and we must do something. So there's no question we will be doing something, and that's where we're bringing a group of people together shortly to talk about that. But we're certainly doing that. One of the questions that we haven't addressed here is for those families that may not be at a place where they're looking at doing this for the rest of their lives till 2035. And they're saying, what about, when things turn around and we want to send the kids back to the public school or the private school. Any advice for people that are contemplating that in terms of what preparation or what kinds of things for to go back into that system as a possibility? Have you come across that, Larissa?
Yeah, I have a friend that's doing that this year. She is homeschooling for this year because of COVID, but will be sending her son back as soon as she deems that safe, whether that's January or next year, she doesn't know. And so she has discovered that the only way to get credit through the schools so that he will be able to graduate with his peers is to do ISO courses, which is through the province of Manitoba. She went and spoke to the principal, and he approved for them to do ISO courses at home. He is doing the 2 compulsory courses that his class is doing in school this semester, and then we'll do the same next semester if he doesn't go back then. And so they pay $250 per course to do those courses, and it's marked by someone else. They will send it in and that kind of thing. But he will get credit on his transcript through his school so that he can graduate with his peers.
Right. So that's certainly a possibility. I do know that there have been homeschool families that have worked with schools in the past to have their homeschool programs recognized, evaluated, and transferred into the school system. But it really depends on the principal, depends on the school. There's not a requirement that they do that. So if you're contemplating those things, having a relationship and a discussion with the school is really important. And the option that you've mentioned, the independent study program used to be called correspondence. That option is there, and it does lead to recognized credits, so to speak. So thanks for that, Larissa. Goose family, any closing comments from you folks?
Yeah, I think something that both Trish and I realized as the high school years, we went through them, was when you're in the pre-high school years, the onus is all on you for your children's education. You're teaching them how to learn and everything. And because of that, there's a feeling going into the high school years that you have to do it all. And really, you've done enough when they get to the last couple of years and they're all on their own. They're doing it themselves. So for Abigail, she took a year off, and then she took the initiative. She did Red River all by herself. We just, helped her with a transcript or something, but it was all on her. And that was a check mark for us. We had done what we needed to prepare. Alexandra in grade 12, I went with her to that first interview with the principal, but she did it on her own. It was because of how she was able to speak directly at 16 years old at that point. She was able to speak directly to the principal, and one of his questions was, well, what will you do if baking and pastry doesn't work out for you? And she said, well, I think, that I'd pursue a, violin further, because I really like playing my violin. And he was so impressed with how she could speak to him as an adult that was our check mark. Alexander was ready to go. And for Anna and Zara, with the whole U of M, if they choose to go there next year, I realize now that I don't have to make it happen for them. They are young adults and they can do it on their own. I will be there to support them in any way I can. And so will Trish, she'll do the transcript thing and all that. But our goal through high school changes from the previous years. And you can take a lot of the pressure off yourself, realizing that their success is the fact that, and that they're successful because they're able to take that next step and make it happen for themselves. And we just become their cheerleaders. So.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening. Just wanted to remind everyone that as you have questions, that I expect that you will, feel free to send emails to info@matches.ca, or if you're a Facebook aficionado, you can join the Manitoba Association Christian Homeschools Matches discussion group, and just ask your questions, and you will get many people that will, like here, be able to share their experience and provide you with information. So I would encourage you to sign up for those and to be able to get that information as you go along your journey. So before we leave, I'm just going to close this in prayer and invite all of you to invite your family, friends, and parents for the session next week. And thank you for joining us this evening. So let's close in prayer. Lord God, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for the homes that we've been able to visit with, for the for the stories that we've been able to hear of your faithfulness, your enabling, and your giving what was needed to the families. And Lord, we just thank you that you can enable us through your word and through dependence on you to be able to do mighty things. And Lord, you just pray that you would enable parents all across this province to raise their families and to teach their children in your ways. And we just thank you for that privilege. Pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you all. And again, tonight was recorded, so you can refer back to it and send others to the Matches website to be able to access the recordings and be able to share them. So thank you all, and hope to see you again next week. Goodbye for now.